Hello and welcome to the panel on technologies enabling green transformation in the Middle East. I'm Jennifer Nyana, energy correspondent with The National. The United Arab Emirates created history last week by becoming the first Arab nation to fully commit to a net zero future. The UAE plans to generate up to 50% of its power needs from renewable sources by the middle of the century. This ambition requires huge investments, and the UAE plans to invest $160 billion over the next 3 decades in technology and innovation. Following the pandemic, in line with major global economies, the UAE unveiled plans to offset emissions, invest in green hydrogen, and also accelerate plans to prepare for a world where fossil fuels will no longer be the predominant energy source. Joining me to talk about these developments and the technologies needed to reach these ambitious goals are Dr. Nawal Alhosani, the UAE's permanent representative to the International Renewable Energy Agency. IRENA, which is based in Masdar City in Abu Dhabi, has 166 members and is mandated to promote the adoption and sustainable use of renewable energy. Welcome.
Thank you, Jenna.
I'm also joined by Khaled Al Huraimel, the Group Chief Executive of BIA, a kind host for this session. BIA has had one of the most interesting trajectories in sustainability in the region, setting the tone for circular carbon economy ahead of its time. The company is a specialist in waste management solutions and is working towards a zero waste goal. Khaled and Dr. Nawal, we're delighted to have you join us. Let's get right to it. Dr. Nawal, congratulations on the UAE winning the bid to host COP28 in 2023. Talk us through the significance of this moment.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's actually, it's beyond thrilling. The fact that the UNFCCC has, announced that the UAE is going to be the host for COP28 is significant milestone, not only for the UAE, but for the region. For us to be hosting such, it is the most important platform for climate negotiation, but also for identifying global solutions and moving together towards addressing some of our biggest challenges, which is climate change and energy security and energy access. The UAE has always showed leadership, and I believe this this acknowledgement by accepting the UAE's bid to host COP28 is a testimony of our leadership, passion and commitment towards global responsibility in finding global solutions. You mentioned the UAE is the host of IRENA, and that was the first international organization to be hosted in the region and the first international organization to be dedicated for renewable energy and sustainable solutions. And for us to be accepted globally to be the host of IRENA is a first global testimony of the role that the UAE has played to accelerate adaptation of renewable energy and sustainability and advocacy of this role. The UAE has convened and will continue to convene platforms and global advocacy and debates when it comes to the solution. The timing of this couldn't have been better as we move towards our next 50 years. And again, the UAE is showing leadership in the region. You've mentioned that very recently at Expo 2020 Dubai, the UAE has announced our strategic initiative towards net zero by 2050. That's again, we are trailblazing. The UAE was the first in the region to announce such very ambitious targets. And we see that there is no, we see the ripple effect already. We see our friends and neighbors in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain also announcing similar pledges by 2060. So the fact that we now going to be the host of, we are currently the host of Expo 2020, but we are going to be the host of COP28 shows how we are moving in a very pragmatic and systematic way to maintain to continue to pursue our ambitions for our leadership in the climate change sector, but also shows that as a responsible country and a society, we are willing to convene this global debate, but move it a little bit forward towards practical actions. Mm-hmm. You mentioned how the UAE was active in COP26, which just concluded in Glasgow. And let me share with you some, because we have been extremely active with the delegation of around 150 people, mm-hmm. with so many commitments and pledges. So if I may, I don't want to miss any of the important milestones. I'm just going to read them off my notes. One of the first, or what shows the UAE's approach towards this kind of platforms, is that our pledges has been action-oriented, mm-hmm. addressing three main pillars: finance, because there's a global movement towards financing solutions; technology, again, we cannot achieve a sustainable future for all without advancement of technology; and being environmentally conscious and addressing environmental challenges. And our pledges has been very much aligned with those opportunities that we are creating in those sectors, and with the opportunities we are creating, not only providing the funding that is required or the platforms that is needed, but also nudging a little bit more towards actions and convening those actions here in the UAE. So one of the most important things that we launched during the first few days was the launch of the Energy Transition Accelerating Financing Platform, which is ETAF. This is a new $1 billion platform that the UAE has announced with IRENA, with the International Renewable Energy Agency, with an anchor fund from Abu Dhabi Fund of Development with $400 million. The aim of this is to generate up to 1.5 gigawatt of renewable energy around the world in many developing countries. Also, jointly with the United States, we have launched AIM for Climate, which is what we call the Agriculture Innovation Mission for Climate. And in very, very little time, AIM has received $4 billion mm-hmm. of increased investment coming from more than 30 countries to accelerate innovation in climate smart agriculture and food systems for the next 5 years, so very, very short time, but there is clear commitment there. Also, the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment launched the Hydrogen Leadership Roadmap, which will help the UAE again become a global leader of climate action and low-cost producer and exporter of both blue and green hydrogen. Also, the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment will plant 100 million mangroves by 2030. That's again a major increase from the 30 million mangroves that are originally set up and basically committed by our nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement. So this is our original commitment. This is our initiative that we launched with our partner. But also, as a responsible country, we signed global pledges to stop and reverse deforestation and cut methane emissions by 30% by 2030, and this is under the Global Methane Pledge. So it's important that, we have those pledges and we've seen those pledges and we heard about them. But what's different this time is that we are driving action. Mm-hmm. We are looking at this as it needs to be driven by clear milestones and clear roadmaps, because, either we like it or not, as David Attenborough said, we are 1 minute before midnight. But as the Prime Minister of the UK said, we are a minute before midnight. So that's very important. And why the UAE is doing that, and why UAE has showed commitment and leadership, is again because we understand, like what we saw with the COVID. Nobody is safe unless we are all safe. And with climate change, it's even worse. Nobody is going to be safe from climate change unless we are all safe. And that's why the UAE has and will always be a very important and a key global player when it comes to addressing those challenges, but also looking at them as opportunities. Opportunities to create economical growth, opportunities to create new jobs, opportunities to create new industries. And I believe we are going to hear from Khaled more than that, because I think with the work that we are seeing now with BIA and the initiatives by BIA is an example of how we are creating new sectors and new industries to address this global challenge by innovation. So it's not we are moving away from we need to stop, we need to stop, we need to stop. No, we are not going to stop. We need to grow our economy, but we need to grow it in a responsible way. We have our resources. The UAE has been a responsible energy producer, and this is our legacy, and we're going to continue to be a responsible energy producer with a huge mix of different types of energy and renewable energy, sustainable solution, and the carbon capture solutions, and the new technologies when it comes to energy is very important for the UAE, and I believe creates global opportunities for a very innovative new sector that is definitely needed.
It's interesting how the UAE has managed to carve itself a niche when it comes to taking the leadership role in climate action and in sustainable development in the region. With the pledges you said, I mean, Her Excellency Mariam Al Maheri received a lot of praise for the Agriculture and Innovation Fund that you mentioned, and the UAE was one of the first in the Arab world to put forth its NDC and reaching net zero targets. Now, obviously, this puts a lot of spotlight on the UAE and businesses at the forefront of sustainability. How are these commitments likely to impact a business such as BIA, which has been at the forefront of sustainable technology over the last few years?
First of all, we're very proud to hear about the UAE hosting COP28. The development at COP26 have been very encouraging, and the UAE has several initiatives that has been announced that will boost the national sustainability agenda. For BIA, we've been established in 2007 to tackle environmental challenges this region is facing. And one of these main challenges that we have and continue to have in this region is waste. We have a very high output of waste per capita in our region. And the UAE has put targets to address this issue. And for BIA, we operate across the UAE and now also in the MENA region. And this is one of the areas that we have become a leader in. We've achieved the highest diversion rate away from landfill in the Middle East, 76%. But we also are tackling other areas when we're looking at air quality. We're also looking at renewable energy. We're also recently now investing in digital and also towards our zero waste journey and zero waste solutions. We have today become, as I said, a pioneer. We have several facilities that we operate, from construction and demolition waste to municipal solid waste, and now also our new facility that will be commissioned in the next few months is the first waste to energy facility in the region that will help Sharjah and the UAE towards its vision towards zero waste.
Thank you, Khaled. Now, when it comes to technology, which is the premise of our discussion, do you think COP26 adequately addressed the technological advancement that needs to be done in order to reach these milestones by the middle of the century, reaching net zero, containing the warming of the planet?
I think it's very important that we understand that what matters here is the vision and the target. Technologies are a tool, and we should not lose sight of that. So our vision, global vision, is first to achieve energy security and energy access to all, while mitigating and ensuring that global warming and ensuring that we stay below the 1.5 degrees. So the how is where technology is extremely important and definitely very important and a critical element, because we saw it in solar. We saw how when we started at Masdar in 2006, the cost has been phenomenal, very, very high and prohibitive. And with the work that the UAE has done in our innovative bidding and the scale we offered for our platforms has driven the cost down dramatically. As you know, today the UAE is the host of the 3 largest solar plants in the world with the 3 lowest cost globally. So once you have the scale, once you have the implementation and efficiency and technology is going to drop, and the cost is going to drop. And this is where we are after and what we are targeting in technologies such as hydrogen. Because we looked at hydrogen in Masdar in 2007, and it was extremely expensive, and we haven't, maybe we put a pause, but haven't dropped it. But as we move forward now, again, we have this leading role to help advance it with our partners. So was there enough focus in COP in technology? I think there was clear focus in COP on sustainable solutions that needs to be implementable, and definitely technology advancement is going to be the way for us, or one of the ways for us to move forward. We can't reach global energy access without understanding challenges related to renewables and tapping on solutions such as storage, for example. Advancement of hydrogen, that's gonna that's gonna have a great impact on heavy carbon industries such as aviation, for example. So technology has been a core, and we saw a lot of solutions in the green zone in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, where you go to those companies and you see how much thought and leadership are being put in place to test or to push those technologies, or the edge of those technologies, a little bit further. So there has been focus. We see that from the companies that are taking place. We see that from the pledges. And again, the world now started to see low carbon technologies and industries as an important element of that gonna create opportunities and economical growth opportunities, and we share that vision here in the UAE.
That's an interesting point you raised, because over the last decade we've seen how the region, and the UAE in particular, it was at the forefront of helping reduce the cost for renewables through the massive solar projects. And now we're hoping to see a replication of that success when it comes to hydrogen with the massive announcements that we've seen. And it's something that IRENA has talked about how hydrogen could be developed in the future. But I want to come to Khaled, where you've been talking about circular carbon economy before it became a buzzword, and you've been putting that into action for a very long time. Now with these pledges and these developments, what more do you think we can do?
Well, as I said, BEA has been looking at tackling a lot of these environmental challenges, from zero waste solutions, looking at renewable energy projects. Also, we actually also look at monitoring the air quality, looking at sustainable transport. And if I give the example of what we've done with our zero waste solutions. So about 13 years ago, most of the waste was going to landfill. In the last 13 years, we have built the infrastructure to reach a waste diversion of 76%. With various different facilities. Now, our waste to energy facility, which I talked about briefly, this will process 300,000 tons of waste and will generate 30 megawatts of power when it goes live by the end of this year, and when it will be commissioned. Now, what will happen to the landfill? So this will help us reach zero waste. So even our landfill, we're looking at repurposing it to be one of the first solar landfills in the region, which that area of that landfill will be able to generate around 120 megawatts of power. We're also looking at a waste to hydrogen project. That's a new project that we're working on. So this is, again, we're looking at the circular economy, and even for waste, how we not just process and recycle, but also how we generate waste and how we treat that waste.
Thank you, Khaled. Dr. Nawal, now ahead of COP, Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Bahrain all committed to a net zero future. What does it signify when the fossil fuel heartland of the world says that it's time to reach these targets?
The UAE, from day one, and I believe that's now translated into, or the message now is being reflected in many other countries, has been very clear on our understanding that oil and gas is a finite resource. And we have been working to diversify our economy and our energy mix from day one. So looking at our effort to diversify our economy has been embedded in the UAE since its was establishment. This has been one of the very important lessons that we learned from, God bless his soul, Sheikh Zayed, who founded this nation, to understand that what matters is your people, your environment, and your global responsibility. And this has been something, and the values that we were raised upon. Hydrocarbon is an important and still an important part of the global energy mix. And we will continue to, as a responsible nation, to provide the energy that is needed for the global growth, which is still very needed. We look at this as a transition. There is renewable energy and sustainable energy solutions are part of the current, because now it became mainstream, and future energy mix. And the UAE, like our neighbors, we don't want to be losing our leadership in the energy sector. So that's what we are doing now. You know, we understand that renewable energy is going to always be part to address one of the most global challenges, which is climate change, and renewable energy and renewable energy sources going to be key to those solutions. Address the growing global energy needs. So, you know, 20 years ago, I believe renewables were 20% of the energy mix, and that's still, I think, the case. A little bit of growth, but the global energy demand is increasing. And also, for us, we need to be part of what's going to be part of our energy mix. So, looking at renewables and advancing renewables and accelerating adaptation of renewables maintains our leadership. So the UAE today is actually, we have, in partnership with the UK, we are supporting the UK in their efforts to achieve the decarbonization of the energy sector, because we have 3 of their main wind farms.
Through Masdar's
partnership. And we have presence in 70 countries, not only in developed countries, but developing countries as well. So we help a lot of developed countries to decarbonize their energy sector, but we are also supporting a lot of developing countries to address their energy security and their energy need and their energy access, which means that we are contributing globally to those, but we are also seeing them as an opportunity, as I mentioned, because it is an economical opportunity. So, but the message also coming here from the region shows that, you know, the region is not stuck in its way. We, as young nations, we have been always extremely open to innovation and open to change, and we understand that, you know, with change comes opportunities, and with that we are open to those opportunities, and we are actually shaping them. You know, I was extremely proud. I was really proud. I cannot say it enough, and I'm not saying it because I'm an Emirati and I represent my government. I was so proud. The UAE came across as a global leader in COP26. I get so emotional, I get goosebumps, because no other country that doesn't need to, as per, you know, as per our scale and our size, you know, our actions are stemming out of our global responsibility. So not by global mandate. It's not because we have to, it's because we want to be this global player when it comes to, you know, the achieving a sustainable future for all, and being part of this global movement towards addressing our climate change threats.
You were with Masdar before, and the country had a head start when it came to energy diplomacy and, you know, renewable energy. And it's interesting to see, as you mentioned, that the UAE has gone from, you know, bringing down the costs for renewables within the region to actually being a developer of these resources abroad. Now, coming to Khaled, what technologies can the UAE explore when it comes to creating a greener economy? You spoke about, you know, transforming landfills into possible solar sites. What more can be done? I mean, what are you excited about?
To give you an example, you know, with BIA, we have 2 core pillars, which is sustainability and digitalization. So it's one of our core verticals, actually. So if I give you an example, when we look at waste management, other than what I discussed earlier about our journey towards zero waste, it's also how we collect the waste and how we manage waste. All our vehicles are tracked. All the bins that we have RFID tags. So we have optimized routing for our vehicles. We also have 2 digital ventures that we have also established. One is Evotech. Evotech is one of BS Digital arms, which does a lot of activities in this sector. And another recent venture, an exciting venture, is called Relife. And Relife, we've actually built 2 digital platforms. One is Relife Market, which is actually a marketplace for trading of recyclable commodities. And that business is growing exponentially. And we're very proud to see how that's moving forward. And the other platform that we have built is Relife Collect, which the easiest way to explain it is the Uberization of waste management.
Okay.
So that also started a few months ago, and it's actually doing very well. And the intention also for we as a company, we embrace digitalization in everything that we do. So these platforms, we want to take them globally. We're starting here in the UAE as a group, BIA. We're also expanding. We have now presence in Saudi, in Medina. We have also presence in Egypt and Cairo. And our ambitions is to be a global player in the MENA region and beyond in sustainability and also digitalization.
When you say recyclable commodities, is it plastic only or?
So plastic,
Okay.
it's OCC, cardboard, aluminium, all types of recyclables.
And when you say it's an Uber for waste management, so I can just
So you can
collect,
actually
okay.
download the app today. Both applications, Relife Market and Collect, are available. You can download Relife Collect, for example. It provides 2 services, disposal of bulky waste as well as transport of material. So even if you wanted to transport material from one point to the other, you can use this service.
Okay, that's very exciting. Something I'll check out. But Dr. Nawal, coming back to you, in an op-ed published in The National, the newspaper that I work for, you recently talked about how the UAE's net zero initiative and Operation 300 billion to promote a cleaner industrial future by dramatically reducing carbon footprint of national manufacturers and industrialists. Now, we've seen so far this year that the UAE has pushed for decarbonizing manufacturing sector, making green steel, for instance, using green hydrogen instead of polluting coal, which is being phased out globally. How can the region lower the energy intensity of some of its high carbon industrial activities, and where can we start?
And again, I'm going to say it with so much pride. I think the UAE is a great example to look at and to see basically the blueprint of how these things can happen. You just mentioned this announcement. The way the UAE works, which is, I believe is a very unique, is it works like in a holistic matter. So we had the vision from the leadership, and then we allocated fund, but everybody is working together towards that. You mentioned the fund to advance those industries, and we saw the Ministry of Industries and Advanced Technologies are incubating so much smaller funds to create this sustainable industries and incubate those technologies here in the UAE and providing platforms for research and development, either in locally or internationally. We invested in graphene in Manchester, in the UK. We are hosting Masr Institute. We are hosting Mohammed bin Zayed Artificial Intelligence University. So we are combining the search for talent globally, investing here in the UAE and creating an ecosystem for such advancement to happen. The partnership that BIA has with Masdar is another example. You could tell how we are utilizing our national products and our national solutions to create synergies and identify those opportunities. So as I mentioned, for the UAE, that's an economic growth opportunities, and we know that we need to be investing in the future, and we're going to create this future together through investing in industries, but also investing in people and creating the right pool of talent and all our people. As you see, the UAE, and this is something I'm very proud of, we had the biggest female participation in our negotiation team when we went to Glasgow just a couple of weeks ago. We had the biggest youth delegation as we moved towards Glasgow. So all members of the community and society are members of this advancement, and that's how the UAE is doing it. So there is the bigger vision, and then every entity in the UAE, either it's a government entity, it's a private sector, it's a non-for-profit organization, and academia, they are all going to contribute to this vision with their own roles and their own platforms, and contribute to it in a meaningful and a very systematic way.
Khaled, you spoke about plans for a waste to hydrogen project. Now, in the UAE, we've seen state entities such as ADNOC Mobile